Psalms 83, Part 2, Arab involvement. Quote, question. Did anyone ask the question? Where on earth did the Africans get all the surplus people to sell off? The answer? It started in and around 70 AD, during the Zealot Wars with the Romans. Tens of thousands of people who were able to leave at that time fled the constant bloodshed. Add into the equation, Rome declaring all-out war on Jerusalem in 136 AD, basically outlawing the Israelites as enemies of Rome, and the carnage and slave grab began. Thus, it was such a glutton of slaves, they couldn't sell anymore at Hadrian's Market in Hebron and put them on ships headed for Egypt. So many died just on the way there that eyewitness historians of the day called it the worst humanitarian catastrophe they had ever witnessed. Being enemies of the state, the Romans were willing and able to sell the Israelites at a rate so vast, the price of a human was less than of a horse at once they got to Egypt. Now, add this to the equation. Being considered enemies of the state of Rome meant they were enemies in all of Roman jurisdiction. For this reason, they made human sacrifices in an event called the Triumph of Israelites. They sold Israelites to all of their provinces for the infamous gladiator games, etc., etc., etc. Now, look at a map of the Middle East, and in particular, the Roman Empire. The Israelites had no place to run, no place to hide. The only possible way out of their enemies' conquered land was to go through Idumea and make their way through Tiamat to get to Arabia. And we all know that shit wasn't going to happen. They were stuck like Chuck. Hence, the reason why there were so many still around to begin with. So many Israelites still around in Israel to begin with. But I want to bring attention to those who were already living in other Roman provinces or were able to leave Jerusalem during the Zealot Wars. Seeing living in Edom and Arabia was out of the question, and the Assyrians were on the east, the only place they could flee is to the west, into Egypt and then to Africa. Well, I'm sure the Africans were not just going to take in all of these able-bodied refugees without some type of a deal. Well, listen to this traveler's tale of his visit in Africa and tell me what you think in the comment section. I got this from a book entitled Travelers in the Interior of Africa, Chapter 22, War and Slavery. Quote, the slaves in Africa, I suppose, are nearly in the proportions of 3 to 1 to the freemen. They claim no reward for their services except food and clothing, and are treated with kindness or severity according to the good or bad disposition of their masters. Customs, however, has established certain rules with regard to the treatment of slaves, which it is thought dishonorable to violate. Thus, the domestic slaves, or such as are born in a man's own home, are treated with more leniency than those which are purchased with money. But these restrictions on the power of the master extend not to the care of prisoners taken in war, nor to that of slaves purchased with money. All these unfortunate beings are considered as strangers and foreigners, who have no right to the protections of the law, and may be treated with severity or sold to a stranger, according to the pleasure of their owner. Example. Could this be the reason why some of the slaves were sold to the Arabs or crackers and some are still in place today? I'm talking about the black Israelite Jews of Africa. Could it be the first wave of free Israelites freeing imminent doom from the Romans were able to work out a deal, thus going under the law of kinship, and those bought from Roman/Egyptian slave giveaway were the slaves in the African intercontinent slave system we talked about extensively earlier? Ponder that as we move forward. Interstage left, the sand niggas, who would later join forces with the sand crackers to become sand assholes. Here is where the Psalms 83 comes into play. Remember much earlier when I said we must listen to what is said, and more importantly, what is not said? Check out what they said, and I will tell you what they have not said later. Quote, the increased presence of European rivals along the East Coast led Arab traders to concentrate on the overland slave caravan routes across the Sahara from the Sahel to northern Africa. Example, did anyone catch the obvious omission of human nature proven in modern times? What am I talking about, you ask? Let me give you a perception to view my answer. Mr. Charlie, I will be speaking to the colors in a language they understand. What? No, not violence. Well, you're kind of sort of right. I'm going to speak to them in hood. But wait, this one will be easy for you. Why? Because you will be familiar with the surroundings, seeing you and your kids come to the hood to buy the drugs I will be talking about. See, I'm not trying to leave you out of the loop. Okay, we read what they said about the Arabs and crackers how they split up Africa to sell off the humans. Now look at what they said through hood eyes. The Crips, you ready? The Crips had the Carter on lockdown. They had lookouts, enforcers, runners, the whole nine. All of a sudden, the Bloods came on the scene and went into the heart of the Carter and set up shop. The reaction from the Crips? Start selling only on the upper floors. Well, that is exactly what they are omitting, thus saying happened. Now, you nor I, Jew nor Gentile, can believe this peaceable infringement upon not only the Arabs' turf, but started slinging their own shit could actually happen. Yet, there isn't one reference, not one of all research to this point, to suggest there was one skirmish between the two. Not one! There is only one plausible reason for this breach of human interaction. Psalms 83. There is no other understandable reason for the lack of a turf war between different races over the same product. How could this be, seeing the Arabs had the entire Indian Ocean and each and every slave port on lockdown with their own navy of ships and land warriors? Check this out. Under the African slave trade, the Indian Ocean, subtitle Economics, quote, basically by controlling either the Indian Ocean or ports on the Arabian Sea, the Arabs and Ottomans stopped. Notice, they separated the two different seas of people. But let's continue. Quote, were able to monopolize trade with the East. If Europeans wanted luxury goods from the East, porcelain, silk, spice, and others, they had to trade with the Arabs and Ottomans. This was an extremely profitable trade for the Muslim powers. Stop. So, the Arabs and the Europeans were already trade partners, huh? To such an extent, the Arabs and Ottomans had a monopoly on the trade from the East to the crackers. Psalms 83. But wait! Before you even start to debate within yourselves the extent of my madness, when you read Joel 3 in the Septuagint, what do you perceive? I perceive a closer look at Psalms 83. Joel 3, 4 through 8 in the Septuagint, quote, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Sidon, modern day Lebanon, and all Galilee of the Gentiles? Stop. According to Wikipedia under Galilee, subtitle History, quote, chapter 9 of 1 Kings states that Solomon rewarded his Phoenician ally, King Hiram I of Sidon, with 20 cities in the land of Galilee, which would then have been either settled by foreigners during and after the reign of Hiram I, or by those who had been forcibly deported there by later conquerors such as the Assyrians. Hiram, to reciprocate previous gifts given to David, accepted the upland plain among the mountains of Naphtali. Example, today it has an Arab majority of 75%. which can only mean a mingled lot of sand niggas and sand crackers, which can be summed up by simply calling them sand assholes. Let's continue with the scriptures. Quote, do ye render me recompense, or do ye bear malice against me? This is y'all talking. Quickly and speedily will I return your recompense on your own heads, because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and ye have brought my choice ornaments into your temples. And ye, who's he talking to? Who's he talking to? Tyre, Sidon, who's all right. Ye have sold the children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem to the children of the Greeks, that ye may expel them from their coasts. Therefore, behold, I will raise them up out of the place whither ye have sold them, and I will return your recompense on your own head, and I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hands of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them into captivity to a far distant nation. For Yah has spoken it. Stop. Hold up. Wait a minute. First, I love it when Yah talks like that. Second, and in my humble opinion, is one of the greatest misunderstandings / secrets in the entire scriptures. Am I the only person to notice? It was the sand assholes that sold us to the cracker, not the African per se. I know I'm not mistaken, because y'all backed it up by doing to others as they did to you, by selling their children like they did us. The Arabs knew they only had the Africans and the Middle East on lockdown. Both are still close to the Israelite borders. They knew they needed another player in the mix to accomplish their true goal. Either eliminate us completely. 6 out of 10 children ages 8 through 12 died from complications of castration. They tell us it was for the purpose of protecting the king's vagina supply. But as the prophecies and their confederated pact states, they were trying to extinguish us. Castration means no reproduction, which goes against physical sense. Why? If you continuously need slaves, why continue to import them if you can breed your own? Let's continue. Or do their plan B. Get us as far away from the Middle East as possible. Enter stage right. The Jew boys. Boo! Boo! As we all know, the Jew boys supplied the finance and ships for the Atlantic slave trade. Some of their flies are in the images. Please remember, before slavery, the white man wealth was tied into property ownership in a stagnant market outside of the cities in a frontier country. Who can't see a greedy Jew? Wait, that's like saying ATM machine, huh? Who can't see them going into a cash-strapped, labor-laden, and ruffle-wearing soft cracker boy and telling him a new way to diversify their income? I'm going to let you guys go, but before I do, allow me to give you one last avenue of perception to view my theory. I truly believe I am the only person in America that has not watched a crime show of any capacity. So, you should be all too familiar with the formula of following the person with the most interest in the matter. Well, use that same logic in hearing this small piece of evidence that should make everything make sense to you. Did you know the founding fathers went out of their way to accept the Arabs and Ottomans, and even use their small presence in America to craft the religious freedom segments? You don't believe me, don't you? According to the Washington Post, February 3rd, 2016, under Obama, Thomas Jefferson, and the fascinating history of founding fathers defending Muslim rights. Quote, indeed, a number of the founding fathers explicitly mentioned Muslims, along with other believers outside the prevailing Protestant mainstream, as they outlined the parameters of religious freedom and equal protection. under clearly going out of their way. Quote, it's not as if Muslims were an overreaching concern for early Americans, a Monticello scholar says. Personal quote, there just wasn't a large Muslim presence in the United States, at least not an acknowledged one, said Andrew Jackson O'Shaughnessy, some kind of Hennessy, Vice President of the Thomas Jefferson Foundation and Saunders Director of the Robert H. Smith International Center for Jefferson Studies at Monticello. Another personal quote, the real significance was that Muslims were mentioned at all, that O'Shaughnessy said, pointing to specific mentions of Muslims in several petitions, some written by Baptists, in favor of Jefferson's religious freedom statute. Another personal quote, it is very significant because they were clearly going out of their way to show just how broad and complete was the idea of religious freedom. Example, sounds more like they were making good on a deal to me. The perfect coup de grace. What about you mean? I mean, if they were going to be partners, they had to have free and clear access to peddle their wares and make deals, right? As the treacherous as Moors will gloat, they, Arabs, African Muslims, etc., were not only not slaves, they claimed to have helped the infidels enslave us in various consultation positions. What do you think those consultations were about, people? Wait a minute. Ponder this as we sign off. What if the people proudly showing us pictures of how friendly they were with the cracker, as though they already had financial and infrastructure business already? What if the people who call themselves Moors are the remnant of the poor Edomites among us? That was only a wild thought, but a plausible one none the same. Either way, don't trust them darkies over there. Comment section is open. Thank you for looking at this one. Going through me as I push through it. Look for the next.